When you think about zombie films, the first thing that comes to mind is the picture of a group of survivors stranded inside a house with the undead thumping the windows from outside. The first supernatural zombie film that did not feature voodoo as the source of the curse was called Night of the Living Dead by George R. Romero, and it featured that iconic picture of the house, the survivors inside, and the monsters outside. Now, jump around 30 years into the future, and you have a modest group of Japanese developers making a game that will give a spin to that idea. Instead of a wooden house, we have a labyrinthian mansion. Instead of having zombies outside, we have infected dogs trying to break inside. And instead of being relatively safe inside the house, you have zombies and other creatures lurking within the dark corridors, calmly awaiting their prey. That game was called Biohazard in the East, or as it is more commonly known in the West, Resident Evil. And tonight, in my first Halloween special, I will be reviewing said game. So sit back, grab your popcorn, and let us begin. Now, for RE fans, let me show you my credentials. I have no prior experience within the Resident Evil franchise. This is my first RE game. The only prior experience that I had with this brand is the plenty of RE4 memes, the Milla Jovovich films, which as far as I know aren't very faithful to the games, and of course, the boulder punching scene. This is also my first fully fledged horror game. I have played other games that involve horror elements in their design, and some full-blown surviving horror missions, but not a full horror game like this one. Horror games had attracted me for a long time, but I had never attempted to play one because I wasn't sure of how much these games had to offer in terms of gameplay and mechanics. For some reason, I had this idea that horror games were just walking simulators with jump scares without any real substance underneath. And though a spook ride can be fun, and at times even scary, how much shells of your money's worth can you gather once the initial fright is over? So you can understand why it had taken so long for me to actually buy one of these games and try it out for myself. It was in recent years, after seeing Master Assassin playing and reviewing these games and gushing over how much fun they are, and seeing Leo K. Rogue's analysis on the mechanical depth of the Resident Evil series and how an Assassin's Creed fan could find much enjoyment in this franchise due to its similarities to AC, both in story premise, tool versatility, and focus on functional gameplay over scripted jump scares, that I decided that I was interested in trying RE games at least and see what the fuss is all about. And to be honest, this game that I played is very good. An issue that I have with how horror is implemented in other non-horror games like the Thief games is that mostly the horror is scripted, and once you see it the first time, it becomes less effective the second time you play the game. Yes, the zombies constantly clawing at you in Thief 1 is nasty and anxiety-inducing, but in other missions like the well-executed but overly long and scripted Robbing the Cradle in Thief 3, the impact is much less, mainly because you are hardly in any real danger during most of the mission. And this is not a spoiler. Really, this is something that anyone that understands the Thief games to a deeper level will quickly figure out when starting that mission. I did, and the whole experience afterwards was quasi-anticlimactic. Resident Evil, however, creates horror with gameplay more than it relies on scripted moments. The game interestingly puts you in situations that naturally create anxiety, and thus slowly induce horror into the scenarios the more you play. By limiting the times and locations in which you can save, by adding and changing the position of the enemies as you progress, or sometimes even changing their nature, by limiting the resources that you find and the items that you can carry at any given time, by limiting your movement when you use your weapons, making the characters extremely vulnerable and enemies incredibly tough, by creating cryptic puzzles that sometimes can even punish you with instant death if you fail them, All of these gameplay elements combined with mysterious descriptions, well-executed sound design, evocative scoring, and a few scripted moments, yes, create a very engaging and at times unpredictable horror experience, even during second or third playthroughs. The game, however, is not just about putting you in precarious positions, often rewarding your exploration with much needed resources, giving you tools and weapons that empower you, and by allowing you to rest and save in safe zones. The save rooms with the item box and typewriter will quickly become a highlight for anyone playing the game. I will always remember the first time I entered a save room in Resident Evil, and the immediate sense of mysterious eerie safety that it induced. The experience of finding these rooms is very similar to how it feels finding a bonfire in Dark Souls. In these rooms you can save your progress in the typewriter, and you can place at the moment unnecessary items within the item box, clearing space in your very limited inventory and preserving the item in a safe place for when you later need it. The fact that the item box is transported to all save rooms is a plus, giving you access to all your weapons, tools and keys, no matter where you are. Much of the gameplay revolves around managing your resources, a balancing act between determining how many weapons you need for your next run, carrying the appropriate key, and special items depending on which room you're going, and if you're going to risk treading without medicine so you can carry more ammo or keys. All of this without being able to save, so the more you advance, the more you can lose if you die. The gunplay is slow and methodical, yet satisfying. You cannot move while shooting, and you have to point up or down at the enemies depending on height and distance. So getting used to this system, particularly to anyone that hasn't played this style of game before, is a little clunky and weird. However, with enough practice it becomes second nature, and it is always satisfying each time you land the perfect shot and blow a zombie's head to pieces. A very interesting aspect of the game is that it features two possible protagonists, Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine, and surprisingly enough, each character changes the game considerably. There are story moments that happen only with one of the two protagonists, and supporting characters undergo significant changes in their portrayal, and some do not appear at all depending on which character you choose. Each has different starting gear, but also access to different weapons. Jill, for example, has access to the grenade launcher, which allows you to use different types of grenades with acid or fire effects that helps you destroy zombies without the need of kerosene, while Chris has access to a flamethrower that helps you battle arachnids more easily. Chris also has access to flash bombs, which instantly destroy the monsters when you use them at the risk of taking damage if you remain too close, while Jill has the taser that cannot harm her but doesn't destroy the enemy either. To put it in simple terms, Chris's campaign is mostly combat oriented. With him, there are some puzzles that you do not have to solve because Rebecca solves them for you, but on the other hand, you are forced to battle all bosses in the game, and mostly you do it on your own. Rebecca could help you, but only if you get into trouble. Jill's campaign, on the other hand, is more for the puzzle enthusiast, because Jill, as the Alpha Team's finest and the smartest member of the group, have to solve every single puzzle in the game to finish the story on her own. There is no Rebecca here to help her. However, when it comes to boss fights and certain death traps, Jill, unlike Chris, can count on the help of Barry. Wesker also plays a different role depending on which character you choose, because in Jill's campaign he is mostly absent, playing an enigmatic /antagonist role, while in Chris's campaign, even if the endgame is still very similar, he serves more as an ally through most of the experience, providing you with resources and fixing parts of the house so you can move with more ease as the story progresses. Those little helps are done by Barry when you play as Jill. One of the biggest highlights of the game for me was the puzzles. Puzzles can make or break a game, depending on how obtuse they're made. Surprisingly enough, this game had good puzzles that kept me engaged through the whole experience. Puzzles that were elaborate and creative but solvable. No lunar logic here, which is the best thing they could have done to ensure the game's success, replayability, and overall longevity. Lunar logic was the one and only reason to why I stopped playing adventure games when I was younger. I like the genre, but when you have to spend more time reading a walkthrough than playing the game, that's when the game stops being fun and becomes a drag. I still remember when I played King's Quest V many years ago, in which the only way to beat the villain Mordak was by hiding in his study for 30 seconds in real time. How am I supposed to know that? Then, pick his magic wand and go to the laboratory to swap the magic from his wand into your own. But this gets better. The only way to fuel the magic transporting machine is by feeding it with a piece of moldy cheese that you find not in the laboratory, not in the kitchen of the castle, but within a rat hole in a dungeon, and the only way to get inside that dungeon is by letting yourself be captured by one of the guards. Once inside, and with the glorified cheese in hand, the only way that you can get out of that death hole is if you befriended the castle maid by giving her a golden pendant that you found inside a giant bird nest 5 hours before, so she can now open a secret path for you to escape, otherwise you're trapped for life and the game is over. At least she has the decency to guide you through the maze back into the castle, even if she does so only the first time. Get captured again, and you will have to walk back on your own. This is without saying that having a magic wand to fight the evil wizard is not enough. You need to have learned a few spells from his library so you can stand your ground before the wizard in the final battle. This makes sense. The problem is that the game never explains to you what each spell do and under what context to use them, so when you get to the boss fight, you have to rely more on trial and error than actual knowledge provided by the game and that you found with careful exploration of the environments. This is something that I like from Resident Evil. It rewards careful exploration and observation of the environments more than trial and error formula and lunar logic. Many of the puzzles in the game become almost obvious if you take your time to read all the diaries, notes and letters that you find across the game and understand the many clues they offer. All of this content not only helps you solve puzzles, but also expands the lore and the atmosphere of the game world, so reading them is not just a necessity, but also a fun recommendation. There are some puzzles like the Bullheads with the Gemstone puzzle that becomes easy if you observe the environment carefully enough to notice the patterns and where to place the drawers, and also if you understand how your character moves. The problem with older games like King's Quest V was that they relied too much on trial and error and lunar logic. Even so, these games have their charm. I, in particular, have a soft spot for King's Quest V since that was the first King's Quest game I ever played. Restarting the game, reading the walkthrough and undergoing all the agonies and absurdities that the game puts you through, it was worth it in the end. The boss fight is entertaining and possibly the easiest part of the whole game. It was heartwarming to see King Graham reunite with his family. It was the happy ending the character deserved and a good send-off considering that this would be the last time we would get to play as him in the franchise. But God Almighty, was it hard to get to this conclusion? And for one game that had a satisfying ending, how many others did not? Resident Evil surprised me for being a game that was accessible. This is not to say that the game is easy, because it is not. This is the type of game that throws you into the mists of chaos and expects you to deliver from the very beginning. There is no hand-holding here. Your mental muscles will be put to the test on several occasions, particularly when you put the puzzles alongside inventory management, tool and ammo management, keeping a clear idea of where you're going and how to get there in the quickest and most efficient way possible without dying and losing your progress. However, your critical thinking and careful observation will be rewarded. You will often find out that your logical solutions, more often than not, are rewarded as you play, and that your lighter can actually light a candle when it's snuffed out. Weird, isn't it? You don't have to provoke a dragon first so he lights the candles with his fire and then toss a bucket of water to turn him off before he burns you alive. This is the type of absurdity that you find in games that use lunar logic. Pointing at you again, King Graham. But we've talked long enough about the gameplay and the puzzles. Let us talk now about the characters. Jill Valentine was a genuine surprise for me. As I have said before, the only prior reference that I had to this franchise is the Milla Jovovich films, and in those films, Jill was present in only 2 of the 6, so I do not know this character in the game series. My opinion will come only from the way she was written in this remake version of the original game. To be honest, I was positively surprised. Not only was she good looking, which is a rarity these days, but she was also nice and well behaved, which is also a rarity these days. It is very rare to see a modern female character using the word thanks to anyone, and Jill took me by surprise a few times by actually showing affection to Barry and being thankful whenever he came to help her. She never seemed bothered by any of that, grateful for the help, but always willing to help others in return. She had a very good balance between being a vulnerable character that genuinely shows fear on several occasions in the game, but can also stand up and defend herself, and be an outright badass when the moment calls for it. She actually manages to solve the puzzles by herself. The character, though physically weaker than her counterpart Chris, is however smarter, which is also another rarity these days, because strength is the only attribute that is lauded on women and incentivized in the first place. Intelligence, sensibility, compassion, forgiveness, likability, all of these are attributes that are slowly going by the wayside. Another thing that actually surprised me was that the game allowed and encourages you to save your friends as Jill, instead of slapping her across the face and putting the upstart in her place, as some recent games enjoy doing. Those that have seen my channel long enough know exactly what I mean. It is surprising how hard it's become to achieve this balance with female characters in the last few years. Maybe we should look back at these older characters in older games and figure out what was it that these developers and writers were doing that worked better than what we have now. Maybe, just maybe. Chris Redfield was also highlighted in this game. Similar to Jill, my only prior reference to this character was the movies, and although he was a more interesting character that actually pushed the story forward, and the only of the Ari characters in those movies that had real personality and purpose aside of being an onlooker or a grunt, he only appeared in 1 of the 6 films, and afterwards his character disappears and we never hear of him again. So I didn't know Chris until I played the game, and to be honest, I liked him very much as well. As I already said, the character plays differently to Jill, and some puzzles and boss fights work out differently to how they work in Jill's campaign. However, similar to Jill, Chris is also a very likable character that is bent on helping others and doing the right thing. A hero through and through, which is exactly what you need when you are trapped inside an eerie mansion with infected dogs stalking the perimeter and zombies haunting the hallways. His cautious but confident personality as he tackles the horrors and mysteries of the mansion also made an interesting contrast to Jill's grim resolve. And even if his casual, self-assured walk was less immersive than Jill's conservative slow walk, to a personal level, I warmed up to these little details because his attitude reminded me very much of the attitude that classic adventure game protagonists used to have in the Sierra Online games of the 90s. That carefree but likable attitude. Ah, the old Sierra days. How I miss you. The whole sideline with Rebecca was also heartwarming, and there were moments with these characters that actually struck harder than I was even expecting from a horror game this old and so memed in hilarious ways. Both Barry and Rebecca surprised me in positive ways because they serve as supporting characters to Jill and Chris respectively and bring levity and emotion to what otherwise would be a straightforward puzzle game with surviving horror themes. Barry's character arc was both fun and compelling to watch. The character has a lot of layers across the game. changing the way you perceive him throughout the whole campaign, with twists and turns that are only present in Jill's storyline and not in Chris's. There are even moments in which you can pick choices and change the course of the story, and the fate of the character of Barry, the game even giving you achievements accordingly. As a whole, Barry was one of my favorite aspects of this game. His relationship with Jill was both corny and wholesome at the same time. There is even this moment in which the character goes full Rambo mode that was completely hilarious. And there are some scenarios which involve real danger in which Barry can actually save Jill's life, different to Chris's campaign in which he had to save himself on those moments. The same goes for Rebecca, who is a character that only appeared in Chris's campaign, and she was also a highlight for me because she fills the game with a lot of emotion and gentle moments that were truly heartwarming. Through her, we see more layers to Chris's character, like big brotherly warmth, which is particularly moving for me to watch because I have a big brother myself, and I know enough of Resident Evil as a franchise to know that this guy has a little sister called Claire, so his warmth towards Becca resonated in various ways for me as I played his story.
Practice makes perfect.
As a whole, I really enjoyed Resident Evil 1. And I will certainly be playing other RE games in the future and probably cover them in this channel as I explore them. If you're interested, you might like subscribing and hitting the bell so you're notified when they come out. Since this is a kind of review of the game, I will definitely give it my blue thumbs up and a full recommendation. If you're a fan of horror or puzzle games, you owe it to yourself to play this classic. As I already said, the puzzles are accessible enough, and I only had to Google a few times for help, which is a far cry from other puzzle games in which you spend more time reading a walkthrough than actually enjoying the game. I'm looking at you again, King Graham, Your Majesty. Also, if you're like me, who lacked the money to buy the Silent Hill 2 remake for this Halloween, then this is a cheaper alternative with all the atmosphere, gunplay and puzzle solving that you want in this type of game. If you have already played it, then let me know what you think in the comments down below. I probably have one more video left in me for this year. Let me pull the curtain a bit and give you a peek. There it is. Now, I cannot end this video without wishing you a spooky but lovely Hallows Eve. Eat a lot of candy, watch horror movies, play your spooky video games, but above all else, stay safe. Love you all and see you next time.